Welcome to the Wayne Public Library's virtual author chat. My guest today is Arell Rivers. For as long as Arell can remember, she has been lost in a book. During her senior year in college, she picked up a romance novel and was instantly hooked. Arell started writing her first book because the characters were screaming at her to do so. The story came out in her dreams and attacked her in the shower, so she took to the computer to shut them up. But they kept talking. Born and raised in New Jersey, Arell has what some may call a checkered past. Prior to discovering her passion for writing romance, she practiced law, was a wedding and event planner, and even dabbled in marketing. Arell lives with 2 adorable cats and a very supportive husband who doesn't care that the bed isn't made or dinner isn't on the table. When not in her writing cave, Arell is found cooking in her Instapot, working out with Sean T, or hitting the beach. Welcome, Arell. Please tell us a little more about yourself and your new novel.
Hi, everybody. Hello. Thank you so much for having me. First thing I want to say is I apologize if you hear any noise going on. We're redoing our bathrooms and the workers are here. So, but unfortunately, none of them look like my covers. So I don't know how that happens in real life. But let me tell you a little bit more about myself. I have been published since very end of December 2016. And I am thrilled with this new direction of my career. Let me see, I have 13 novels out and I am indie published. And I do write every day, which is unusual for some people, but I have found a sprinting group and we get together and we meet like 4 times a day, I guess. We meet 4 times a day and we're like, okay, sprint. And then we write for 45 minutes and then we stop. So, and I'm just very thrilled to be a published author and to be here with you at the Wayne Public Library.
Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about the Sins of the Father series? We're from Vice, Anger and Pride, I believe are the 3 titles in the series so far. Do you find it difficult to keep continuity with all the storylines and characters in your series?
Well, okay, the Sins of the Father series is about the children of 3 men who are arrested by the FBI. The 3 men had created what's called Val Cubed Media. So they're a media mogul company, and this is about their adult children. So, and I sort of got my idea for this series, believe it or not, and please take your prejudice out of it, but I was watching an interview with Michael Cohen a few years ago, and he was talking about his daughter who just graduated from college and couldn't get a job because her last name was Cohen, and they knew who her father was. And that just set my mind off. I'm like, well, what would happen? You don't like the men, you don't want anything to do with them, but what happens to their children? And how does being, related to them, manifest in their adult lives, personally as well as professionally. So that is how the Sins of the Father series was born. And so do I find it difficult to keep continuity? I have a massive Bible that I created when I created this series. There's 3 men, and I have all the wives and the children, and it's a big, huge Bible that maps out the arc of the entire series of what's going to happen to the fathers throughout the series, and then what happens within each child's book in the series. So keeps me sane. That's how I think that's how I operate. So that's what I have going on with that. So yeah, and it was challenging creating the idea. And I was like, well, okay, so, this father has 3 children. Okay, so then I write them down, and then I'm like, okay, and then this guy has 4 kids, and they have to be different from these 3 kids, and your head just starts to spin. But I think I got it all worked out. I don't know. I'll know as I go along.
You say you have a Bible. Is it like a document on your computer, or is it actually like a physical, like like journals full of like?
Yeah, it's actually a Word document
Okay.
with tables and this and that and points and arrows and all sorts of stuff. And I try to keep it all updated as I go.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of, when you think you just finished writing your chapter and you're like, okay, but I need to input this into the into the Bible. That's a lot of extra, but I can see how that would be very important for series.
Yes.
Have you written any standalone novels?
I have not. All of my well, my first novel started out No One to Hold. Where is it? Right here. This one started out. I'm just writing this book to shut him up and then get my life back. And it got really long, like really long. And I'm like, okay. So then I divided it up into a trilogy. So, because back at that time, 50 Shades and stuff, those trilogies were very popular. And so, yeah, so that was my attempt at a standalone. And then 2 more spin-offs happened from it. So I don't do standalones well. I tried.
Do you read standalones? Do you like? Okay. Okay. I personally I love series, so I can see like series because then you just build and build and you learn the characters and you enjoy it. Can you tell us something about your latest book that isn't in the blurb?
Oh, yes. Well, Pride, which I have right here, Pride, and I brought another copy here. But Pride is my latest book. It's been out just under 2 weeks now. Yeesh. And the blurb was told from the heroine's point of view, who is Madison. So anything I tell you about Xander is totally not in the blurb. So I win. This is a good question. But Xander is the guy that he's 33 and he's the eldest of all of the children of the three fathers. He's the eldest of all of them. And he is the guy that women want and men want to be, or be his friend. So he is living the great life. The media loves him. He's the media darling, all of that. Until his dad is arrested by the FBI. And then things start to turn. And at the very beginning of Pride, the company, ValCube Media, the conglomerate by the fathers, has been thrown into bankruptcy. And at the very beginning of the story, he's given the option to quit or be fired. So, and he has only ever worked for his father, his uncles, father and uncles and best friends. And so he is set adrift, and his entire life he has spent trying to get pride, his self-worth came from his father, from pleasing his father. And so now his father's all embroiled in the legal aspect of his life and then the whole ValCube debacle, and he doesn't really have time for Xander. So Xander is set adrift, and that's how the story starts. So.
Okay. And you said that all on these characters, because you have other books, but of all the books that you've written, do you have a favorite character?
That's like asking who's your favorite child or who's your favorite cat, considering I have 2 cats currently. I will just say that probably my favorite is a wrong word, but I will say that I have my most affinity to my very first book I ever wrote, which is No One to Hold. And it's about rock star Cole Manchester. So, but every single book I write, I realize I've learned something new about craft or storytelling, how to do better character development, how to make it more round. So every book, I'm always like, this is my best book, and then I start writing the next book, this is my best book. But the truth is I do grow but Cole holds a special place in my heart because, you never forget your first. So we'll go there.
Okay. And what are you currently working on? Is it also part of the series?
Well, I am currently working on Idle, which is the next book in the Sins of the Father series. We have Anger, Pride, and then the next book was supposed to be titled Sloth, but my friends convinced me that's not a good romance title, so it's now called Idle. And it follows Anger. The hero in Anger was called Theo Hansen, and it follows his youngest sister, Paige.
Okay. Okay. So it's part of the Sins of the Father series, or does it also have, so it's exclusive that one? You don't kind of combined previous series people with the current one, no?
No, like right now I'm just working. There's how many kids? There are 4, 5, 7, 8, 9. There's like 10 kids amongst those 3 men. So I think that's gonna keep me busy for a little bit. So, but I am also working on, that's my next book, but I'm also working on a couple of short stories, novellas. I for the past 3 years now, this is my 3rd year, I've been involved in an anthology that all the proceeds are donated to charity. And we pick different charities every year. So I wrote a short story for that based on secondary characters from Anger. Mm-hmm. And I've also been invited into a pop-up super secret anthology that I'm not at liberty to discuss. And I just wrote a novella for it. And it actually is about Cole. So I went back to the first, because I just missed my little rock star. So there you go.
So I have to ask, what inspired you to start writing?
Well, I was a member of a group on Facebook that I joined after reading 50 Shades of Grey. So, back then. And we were doing group stories. And, we would all take place and we'd all write in like a sentence or a paragraph. And we started growing this. And the idea for Cole's book came into my mind. And I was like, all right. So as you said in my intro, I started writing it to sort of shut him up, and he just wouldn't stop. So that's how I started writing. That's how my writing career started.
Okay. And you had mentioned you've written 13 books so far. And how long? When did you start your writing career?
Well, I published my first book at the very end of December 2016, with no knowledge of how to do anything, no idea about marketing, nothing. I published the trilogy, actually, 1, 2, and 3, all 3 of these books, day 1, boom, they're done. And I released them on December 23rd. Like, Merry Christmas, here you go. So that was my first introduction, which is kind of funny. But that's when I started. And then also, but now, I have 13 books out plus those 2 anthologies. And, and then pretty soon I'm going to be releasing something almost monthly between the anthology and the books. So it's kind of grew. I don't know how that happened. I'm not a fast writer, but that's how it happened.
That was going to be my next question. Like, how fast do you write the books?
I can basically write the first draft in like a month, but it takes me probably about 5 months to go from chapter 1 to publish. 5 to 6 months. All the rest of that's editing.
And how many words in that, are most of them?
Most of them are about 90,000 words. I always aim for 80. Always aim for 80. I'm getting 80 this time, and it's always 90, 95. Like, Pride is 95. I'm like, rats, I didn't do it again. Let's try again.
So 90,000 words, as you're saying, in a month. About how much do you do a day?
Yeah, I write about 5,000 words a day, between 4 and 5 a day. And
Wow.
yeah, it
And
kind of,
do you have like a, do you prefer to write in the morning or do you prefer to write late in the day? What's your schedule?
when I first started, I was a nighttime person. Like I would write till 2, 3 in the morning. And now I think since this has, become a full-time thing for me now, I don't, I'm more of a morning person. My first sprint starts at 9:30 and I'm basically done by 5, popping in with a sprint. So it's sort of, yeah, I'll do other things later, but my mind doesn't, the creativity is there.
And do you just write during those sprints or do you write other than those
Well,
sprints?
generally during the sprints, like that's the vast majority. Sometimes I'll like finish up or I'll, whatever, but I may do another sprint after 5. There's another group of people who live in Seattle that
Mhm.
I'll do a sprint with them like at 7, 8 at night. Just because for them it's like 5. But those tend to be less productive for me. So I'm more of a like morning-ish. I'm not really a great morning person, but I would say like afternoon is a really good time for me.
Wow. But it's just those 4 sprints, generally 4 sprints, and
Yeah.
you're producing 4 to 5,000 words in
Yeah.
that time.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Well, the sprints are like 45 minutes long. So they're not short sprints, they're longer sprints.
45 minutes, you've got to have like a very clear understanding of what those
Yeah.
chapters are going to be.
Yeah.
So I guess that leads me to do you create a detailed plot outline for your book?
I do. Are you? I'm sort of a plotzer. Is sort of where I land. But I have a process, and
Mhm.
it's been developed over the years, and it's kind of clunky, but it works for me. I start with the characters, so I create the characters. From the characters, I create the story, so that I get to know the characters a little bit more till I throw them into the meat grinder and then see what happens to them. Then I meet with a plot coach who helps me make a lot more sense out of everything. So then I take that outline. I know this is a crazy process, but I take that outline and I'll create just like the first quarter of the book. And I will write, lines for what's going to happen in every chapter of the first quarter of the book. Then I write that, and then I, back and forth until the book is done, all 4 quarters. Then it goes to my developmental editor. I make her changes. Then it goes to my regular editor. I make her changes. Then it goes to my proofreaders. I make their changes. Then we go, then I finally have a book. So that's why I say it takes me a month to write and 4 or 5 months to edit.
I guess that leads to what is the most difficult part of the writing process for you?
One guess. For me, I'm not I don't know. Editing, I know is a necessary evil, but at that point, once the book is written, like first draft, okay, I'm done. I don't want to deal with this anymore. So then, for me, I know some people absolutely love doing the edits and stuff, but it's just not my favorite part. But it's a necessary evil because you make changes, you have to make sure everything works throughout the whole story. And so yeah, editing is not my favorite, but if you want a good book, then you have to deal with it. And some people love it. God bless you.
Some people do. I don't understand, but some people do. What was your publishing journey? Well, you just kind of told us about how you you wrote the very long, which became the trilogy, the first trilogy. But what? So I guess there wasn't the call. Did you? You said you were independently published. Um, did you put it out on, I guess, Amazon or some platform out there to
Yeah.
sell? Okay.
I am indie published, but before I published anything, I submitted it to a publisher. Because at the time I was a member of RWA. This is going to sound terrible, but this is the truth. I was a member of RWA. And in order to become a pro member of RWA back in the day, you had to have a rejection from a publisher. So I submitted it to a publisher to get the rejection so I could get into pro. And then they wanted it. And I was like,
oh, that's wonderful.
I was like, wait, you were supposed to say no. I was supposed to get this and then be done. No. So I went back and forth with them. I was obviously, I was really excited, shocked, but I went back and forth with them. She wanted me to make changes that I actually did eventually make a lot of them, but I wanted indie published. I think I'm too type A to have a publisher. So, and then like a year or so later, they went out of business. So I'm happy, but that was my publishing. But I publish now exclusively to Amazon. I'm in KU, Kindle Unlimited. At first I started wide. I started before KU, I think, existed, or it was just so new. And then I pulled everything into KU. So now I'm only on Amazon and KU.
So can you explain, you mentioned sending things to your editors. So how do you go about like finding these folks, or are they provided by Kindle?
No, it's been a journey. I was very lucky with my first 3 books and the novella. Hold on. Yeah, with these 4, I was extremely lucky. I had a really good friend who read this book and she goes, "This book was fantastic." And the editor, she thanked her editor, said it was amazing. And I contacted her and she was my editor. I was able to get her. Okay. She was literally fantastic. Then she went out on maternity leave and didn't really come back. So I've been sort of like going, I tried this person, I tried that person. No one has come up to her level. And I'm actually trying somebody new now who I'm actually extremely excited to work with. So I'm hopeful that she'll be, I have a feeling she's sort of like my original editor, but we'll see. But yeah, so to find editors, I think truly one of the best ways is to read a book and see who's, thanked for being the editor. Also asking friends. A lot in the indie community is asking around, like, who do you use for this? I have a cover designer, and she became a gym owner. So I was like, okay, I need another cover designer. And then I asked around and I found the woman who did these 3 and did these 4. And I thought she was fantastic. And then another friend of mine, like, I don't know, 2 months ago, I was like, I need to find a new cover designer. I'm like, try her, she's fabulous. And she loves her. So it's not easy. No one hands it to you. It is an indie author, but it's rewarding when you come up with somebody good, though. I will say that.
Okay. And so I assume, well, you mentioned wanting to make Sloth the cover and your friends were like, no, that's not romance. So I assume you have a lot of control over title and cover art. So
exclusive. Mm-hmm.
So do you provide data to like the person who's going to put together, your cover art?
Oh yeah. Like for her, I found this guy, and I was like, use him. I want him. And so she actually found that picture. I hadn't found that picture. And, but sometimes she'll find them, like she found him and him, but I found this one. So I'll try to give her an idea, like, well, this is what he looks like, or, this is what I'm doing. But with having control over everything, you can do anything you want. It's sort of like our bathrooms. You can do any tile you want, anything. It's all up to you. And you're like, can somebody guide me? So there's the push and pull for being an indie author versus not.
Okay. And so you mentioned being an RWA, and of course we know you're in New Jersey romance writers, how important was being part of a writers group or having critique partners? How important are those for writing for your career?
Well, when I first started, I had a really, really close group of critique partners, really close. And they were invaluable. I learned so much from them. Now we've sort of, one went off, she had a baby, another moved away. So it changes. And now I've sort of created the same type of thing with my editors, like the developmental editor and the plot coach. They're sort of taking that place. But I think having a critique group is really important. And I guess I would say, especially at the beginning, but I know people argue forever and ever. It's really important.
Okay. And writers group, being a part of the writers group.
Yeah, I think with RWA, I'm sure you know there were some issues with it a couple of years ago. And I dropped out of RWA at that point. I didn't want to be associated with it. And now I'm back to NJ Romance Writers, which is awesome. It's a lot of the same authors, some new faces, which is great. And I think it's really important to connect with other authors, other people who are doing the exact same thing you are and fighting the same fights you are, to even just discuss issues. I just find that being a part of a writers group is, very helpful. And, you learn tips and tricks that you might not have learned, or marketing ideas, and which I think is great.
What advice would you give a new writer that's just starting out?
I would say join a writing group. I when I was first starting out, I went to see Sylvia Day at an author signing, and she was signing the Crossfire series. I think it was the second book, might have been the first. Like, it was very early, for me, it was early on. And I met her and I asked her, what should I do? I want to write. She goes, first thing is never stop writing. Second thing is join RWA. And I will say to new writers today, never stop writing and look for a writers group. That's, my take on it. And then the third thing I would say to them is learn marketing, or be willing to be exposed to marketing, because authors are really on the cutting edge of marketing these days. I believe that with my whole heart. And so learn about marketing, figure out where you want to be. If, I have a really fantastic Facebook group and I love them, and I'm in there every day, and I can see somebody here from our group. Hi, Debbie and Jess. And so you find some place that you'll be at home with, because writing is lonely. I mean, it's you and your computer and your fingers. And it's really important to connect with people.
Okay. At this point, I'm going to ask anyone any of the participants, if they have any questions, to please type it into the chat. I will read your questions to Arell. And while you guys type, I'm going to ask her what I call a fun question. That I've seen on your social media, that you have Foodie Fridays. So where you show a new recipe that you tried. Do you have a favorite recipe of all of those that you've posted?
That's funny. I have several. I get very proud of myself when I make something that's like really good. One of my best friends in the world gave me I don't know what it was called, apricot glazed chicken or something, apricot glazed tilapia, which is fantastic. But I'm gonna go with a meatloaf, just simply because my grandmother made meatloaf using oats instead of breadcrumbs, and I found this recipe that does the same thing. So every time I make it, I think of my grandma.
Okay, meatloaf. That tilapia sounded good, though. I might have to go and find
it. It is really good.
Your site. So our first question, Jessica, Arel, I love your books and especially the covers. A question for both of us. Um, as an indie author, can you have your books in libraries? Absolutely. I can answer that one. Yes. For us, if I can get it, if our vendor doesn't have it, which is Baker and Taylor, I can order it through Amazon as long as it's in paperback, because any other format, that's a whole nother world of trying to get things in any, through those vendors. Um, but absolutely, and I'm always looking to add more, especially local and indie authors, to our collection. And she says, I love, for Arel, I love the creativity of indie books like Arel's Pride that sometimes you don't see in traditionally published books. So that's for you. um, do you have to have an ISBN to publish on Amazon? That's a question for you.
Oh, you don't have to. They will assign, Amazon will assign one to you, but I personally do because that's my type A personality, wanting just to have that just little bit of extra protection.
Okay, and Michelle's asking, do you set your books in one setting or do you like to have multiple settings? Um, I'm not sure if you answered that. So no, she has not answered that. So thank you for that.
Not. Hi, Michelle. My books, it depends on the book. It depends on the characters. I will say that a lot of my books, both this first series and the second series, mainly focused around rock stars, and they're all going on tour. So we're all over the world with these two set series. This book, Sins of the Fathers, actually is set in New York City. And so I stay in New York City, which I know very well. So, and people have commented that they enjoy, that they feel they're in New York, which is super awesome. And then, oh, this one, Out of the Gold, this one was set on a movie set in the Amalfi Coast of Italy, where I had just gone on vacation. So they're like, oh, it feels like I'm in Amalfi. I'm like, oh, I'd like to be back there. So, but yeah, so it depends on the book.
Okay, another question for you, Arel. To Arel, your books rock. Does it cost to publish on Amazon?
No, it doesn't. It does not cost to publish on Amazon, but if someone purchases a book, there is a fee associated with that, and they take royalties. It depends on a whole bunch of things, but they'll take a little bit off the top of the royalties.
Okay, so you said that the rock stars, they travel all over. Have you been to a lot of the places that you wrote, the settings that you put them in? Yes.
Not all, but yeah, I've been to a lot of those places. And the short story that I wrote for the super secret anthology I'm not allowed to talk about, it takes place across, I can't really talk about this. It does take place across the globe, and I've been to some but not all of those cities.
So of the ones that you put in your books, of the different places that they were, what was your favorite? Or the ones you've been to?
Yeah, I loved Amalfi just because I love the Amalfi Coast in Italy. It's like so romantic to me. So I'm going to go with Out of the Gold.
Okay. And where that you've written about that you haven't been to, where would you like to go next?
Sydney.
Sydney. Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. So Jessica is asking, is it true that Cole Manchester is based on Adam Levine, or is that just a rumor?
Well, let's just say, yeah, you think? Yeah, he actually was my idea of how Adam Levine would be if, as a romance hero. And I'm probably better off never meeting him and being disappointed. I'll just keep him living there happily in my head.
Are there any other questions for Arel? So, okay. Well, this has been Oh, wait, incredibly fun. Thank you. That's what it was posted. This has been incredibly fun, Arell. Thank you so much for joining us today and for taking part in our virtual author chat. Everyone else, thank you for participating. And please, I look forward to your next books and adding them to our collection. So thank you again, Arell, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I appreciate your interview, and thank you all for coming.